He texted her new address to the wrong number. Destiny sent a billionaire instead. If you believe that fate only lives in movies, this story may change your mind. Listen carefully, because sometimes one wrong message can rewrite two lives forever. Comment why yes if you believe destiny has Wi-Fi, and let us return to our main character. The rain fell quietly over Brooklyn that night, turning the streets into silver mirrors. Inside a small apartment that smelled of wet paint and cold pizza, Ryan Carter was surrounded by half-packed boxes and silent sketches pinned to the wall. His life had been paused for months, laid off from teaching art, rent overdue, one dream slipping after another. The only light came from his phone screen, glowing against the darkness. He typed without thinking, his fingers trembling from exhaustion and caffeine. "Hey, here's my new address. Moving in tonight, pizza's on me. Paul." He meant to send it to his old roommate, a friend from the art school days. But sleep-deprived eyes can play tricks. He hit send. The message delivered to a number that was not saved in his contacts. Minutes passed. Outside, thunder rolled across the East River. Then his phone buzzed again. "I do not know who you are, but Brooklyn could use more pizza." Ryan blinked, reading the words twice. The reply came with a period at the end, neat and precise like the voice of someone who had never used emojis in her life. He smiled for the first time that day. In another part of the city, 60 floors above the rain, Evelyn Hart stared at the same message glowing on her screen. Her penthouse was silent except for the hum of city lights through glass walls. The CEO of Hart Industries had spent the evening reviewing acquisition reports, her dinner untouched. When the wrong text appeared, she almost ignored it. But there was something human about it, something warm. She typed back before she could stop herself. Now, both of them sat in separate worlds, one small, cluttered, and struggling. The other vast, polished, and lonely, connected by a string of words that neither planned to send. Ryan laughed softly, replying again, "You must be the kindest stranger in New York. I will save you a slice." No response came this time. But the thought of that unseen stranger lingered like the smell of rain. He turned off the lamp, lying back on the old couch, and whispered to the ceiling, "Maybe the universe just texted back." Meanwhile, Evelyn looked out at the skyline. The city was glowing, and for the first time in months, she felt something small but real, a spark of curiosity, maybe even hope. She whispered into the dark, "Maybe the universe did." Legolant. As the rain kept falling, two phones rested side by side on opposite ends of the same city, both screens dimming to black, both hearts unknowingly opening the same door. It began with a mistake, a simple wrong number, but destiny was already typing its next message. And that was how the story started: one text, two strangers, and a night that would quietly rewrite everything they believed about loneliness, kindness, and fate. Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us continue the story. Days turned into weeks, and Brooklyn slowly began to feel like home again for Ryan Carter. The walls of his small apartment were still bare, but the silence was not as heavy as before. Every night, he sat by the window with a cup of instant coffee and waited not for a reply exactly, but for that same feeling the wrong text had brought him: connection. Sometimes he scrolled through his old messages with rereading the single line she had sent. It was strange how someone who barely said anything could leave such a mark. He started painting again, small canvases at first rainy streets, reflections, and silhouettes holding umbrellas. In each painting there was always one window lit, one small glow against the dark. On the other side of the city, Evelyn Hart continued her routine of boardrooms and late-night meetings, yet something inside her had shifted. She found herself checking her phone before bed, half expecting another message from that unknown number. She never told anyone about it, not her assistant, not her driver. It was her secret, a small rebellion against the world that only valued her title. One evening, while leaving a shareholders' dinner, she passed a small art market near the park. The sound of acoustic guitar drifted through the cold air. She stopped, drawn to a booth filled with paintings of rain. One in particular caught her eye: a man standing beneath a single streetlight, holding his phone as if waiting for a signal. The signature at the corner read, "R. Carter." Evelyn froze. The name echoed in her mind. Could it be him? She remembered that text. You must be the kindest stranger in New York. She smiled slightly. The man behind the booth looked familiar, tall, messy brown hair, sleeves rolled up, a smudge of paint on his wrist. For a moment she wanted to walk up to him, to say something, anything. But she stopped herself. She was Evelyn Hart, the face of a corporation worth billions. If she introduced herself now, he would see everything she was trying to escape. So she just bought the painting anonymously through the market site later that night, leaving a short note. Keep painting. The city needs more light. When Ryan received the order notification the next day, he laughed out loud. The message came from an anonymous buyer named simply E. He did not know why, but it felt like destiny was winking at him. That weekend, he decided to take a delivery job for a local coffee shop to make extra rent. It was simple work, quiet, enough to keep his thoughts busy. During one delivery downtown, he stepped out of the elevator into a marble lobby that gleamed like a mirror. A woman turned the corner, phone in hand. Before he could react, his tray tilted and coffee spilled across her white coat. "Oh no, ma'am, I am so sorry." Ryan stammered, reaching for napkins. The woman glanced down, then looked up at him. Her eyes were calm, the kind that had seen storms before. She smiled faintly. "It is fine," she said. "Accidents happen." Ryan froze. That voice, it was quiet, measured, exactly like the text that had once turned his night around. "I will pay for the cleaning," he insisted, still apologizing. She shook her head and stepped back, her gaze catching the name tag on his shirt. Ryan Carter, she read softly, almost to herself. Then she smiled again, warmer this time. "You owe me a new shirt, Mr. Brooklyn." He blinked, confused, not realizing that he had just met the mysterious E, who had unknowingly changed the course of his life. Outside, the wind swept through the city, carrying a faint smell of coffee and rain. Two people walked in opposite directions, unaware that fate had just arranged its second message. The next morning, Brooklyn woke to pale sunlight and the sound of delivery trucks grinding down the narrow street. Ryan Carter stood at his kitchen counter, staring at the coffee stains on his uniform. He could not stop thinking about the woman from yesterday, the calm way she had smiled, the softness in her voice, the way she had said his name. Something about her felt familiar, like a song he had once known but could not place. He wiped his hands on a towel, trying to shake off the feeling. To him, she was just another stranger, another accidental moment in a city full of them. But somewhere deep inside, that moment refused to fade. Later that afternoon, while Ryan was sketching at his small table, his phone buzzed. A new message appeared, the sender listed as E. "You have good reflexes for someone who carries coffee." He blinked, surprised. How did she get his number? Then he remembered the name tag on his chest. She must have looked up the coffee shop and found him through the order records. He typed back slowly, each word deliberate. "You are the lady from the lobby, right? I still owe you that shirt." The reply came almost instantly. "Maybe. Or maybe I just like talking to strangers." Ryan smiled, shaking his head. It felt impossible, the way she could sound playful and mysterious at the same time. Their texts continued through the evening, floating between humor and honesty. She asked about his art, his teaching, the kids he used to work with. He asked where she was from. She only replied, "Downtown. Higher floors, less air." He laughed. He told her about his unfinished painting, the one he had never completed because he could not decide how to paint the Sunday. She said, "Maybe someone else was meant to finish it." Her words echoed through his chest like the memory of his mother's voice, gentle and believing. For the first time in a long while, Ryan felt like the city was not just noise, it was alive. Across the skyline, Evelyn Hart sat on her balcony, phone in hand, city lights blinking below. Every message she sent was a small escape, a reminder that she could still be human beneath the title. She signed her texts simply with E. The anonymity gave her peace. In those messages, she was not the CEO of Hart Industries. She was just Evelyn, a woman laughing at a stranger's stories about spilled coffee and broken paintbrushes. As their conversations deepened, Ryan began to imagine what E looked like. Maybe she worked in a small office. Maybe she lived alone with too many plants. Maybe she was someone ordinary, kind, and real. He never imagined marble floors, chauffeurs, or boardrooms. One night, he received a notification from his art page. A private message. "Your rain paintings are beautiful. Would you ever sell one?" The account name was hidden, initials only EH. He replied, "You can have one. Pick whichever speaks to you." A few days later, an envelope arrived under his door. Inside was a printed receipt from an art charity foundation and a short, handwritten note. For the artist who sees light even in the rain. Ryan turned the note over, reading the signature. E. His heart thumped harder. Was it her again? Or just coincidence? He placed the letter on the wall beside his unfinished painting. That night, as thunder rolled again over Brooklyn, Ryan sat by the window holding his phone. He typed one message, hesitated, and deleted it. Instead, he whispered to the glass, "Who are you, really?" Miles away, in a penthouse wrapped in glass, Evelyn whispered the same question to the city below, unaware that the distance between them was already shrinking. The story of a wrong number was no longer just a mistake. It was becoming a thread delicate, invisible, and unstoppable, pulling two lonely hearts toward a truth neither of them could yet name. The following week, the air over New York turned colder. The kind of wind that scraped against windows and carried the faint scent of snow. Ryan Carter spent his days moving between deliveries and late-night painting sessions. He told himself the texts with E were just a distraction, a passing kindness from a stranger. But the truth lived in his eyes every time the phone lit up. They talked about everything except who she really was. She told him she loved quiet mornings, black coffee, and the smell of rain. He told her he hated elevators and missed the noise of children drawing in classrooms. When he sent her a photo of his unfinished mural sketch, she replied, "Maybe you should show it to someone. Maybe it deserves to be seen." Number. He stared at that message for a long time, unsure whether she meant the art or the artist. One Friday morning, Ryan received a call from a community arts program downtown. A coordinator said they were looking for local artists to help paint a large mural for a charity event. The sponsor's foundation wanted something about hope and resilience. His portfolio had been recommended by someone named E. Hart. He frowned, trying to remember where he had heard that name. The coordinator continued, "She insisted we contact you directly. The event is next month." Ryan accepted, his voice shaking slightly. He assumed E. Hart was someone from a donor list, maybe a patron who had seen his work online. He had no idea it was Evelyn. When he arrived at the site weeks later, the walls were tall and white, a blank canvas waiting for color. The job came with a small stipend, enough to cover his rent for 2 months. He worked quietly, headphones in, paintbrush steady. As he painted, people passed by, volunteers, assistants, camera crews, setting up for the gala night. He never noticed the woman watching from a distance, hidden behind dark glasses and a simple black coat. Evelyn stood there, her heart tight with something she could not name. Every stroke of his brush reminded her of what she had lost, the simplicity of creating something that did not need a contract or a profit margin. She stayed until dusk, unnoticed. That evening, she finally texted him. "How was your day?" He replied, "Tiring but good. I started something new." "A painting?" "Yes, a mural for a charity foundation. Funny thing, it is sponsored by someone named E. Hart. Ever heard of her?" Her fingers froze above the keyboard. She almost told him the truth right then, but the fear was heavier. She deleted her draft and typed instead, "Sounds like she has good taste." Ryan laughed quietly when he read that. He never suspected she was the reason he had been given the chance. Over the next few days, Evelyn visited the site again, each time wearing a scarf or sunglasses, pretending to be a passerby. She watched him climb ladders, mix colors, hum to himself. He painted with a kind of sincerity that disarmed her. In a city where everything felt transactional, his art was pure. When the mural was finally done, Ryan stepped back to look at it, a skyline under a storm clearing, to reveal a rising Sunday, the same sun he had never finished painting before. He smiled, knowing exactly what it meant. The night before the gala, he texted E again. "If you ever feel like seeing something hopeful, come to the Riverside Pavilion tomorrow evening. It is free, just an art thing." Evelyn read the message while sitting in her office, the city glowing beneath her feet. Her assistant knocked on the door, reminding her of the same event she had sponsored. She looked down at the message once more, a slow smile spreading across her face. She whispered to herself, "I think I already planned to be there." Outside, snow began to fall, soft and slow, as if the sky itself wanted to see what destiny would do next. The night of the gala arrived with the kind of elegance only New York could conjure. The Riverside Pavilion glowed beneath a curtain of snow, the river behind it reflecting thousands of lights. Inside, the air hummed with music, chatter, and the clinking of glasses. Guests in gowns and tailored suits filled the room, their laughter echoing beneath chandeliers. Ryan Carter had never been anywhere like it. His calloused hands felt out of place against the polished marble floor. He wore a borrowed suit from a friend at the cafe, sleeves a little short, collar a little tight. But his eyes, those were steady. On the far wall, illuminated by soft golden light, stood his mural. The storm, the skyline, and the sunrise's heart laid bare in color. He had been told the sponsor would make an appearance later that evening. All he had to do was mingle and answer questions about his art. He held a glass of water, not champagne, and kept glancing toward the entrance, wondering who this mysterious E. Hart really was. At the same time, Evelyn Hart's car pulled up outside. Her driver opened the door, but she hesitated before stepping out. Tonight she was supposed to appear as the powerful CEO, the face of the foundation. Yet inside that same building was the man who had texted her about pizza and rain, the one who called her the kindest stranger. She took a deep breath and entered. The room seemed to hush when she appeared. Reporters turned their heads, cameras flashing. Ryan noticed the reaction before he saw her. Then, through the crowd, she appeared elegant, calm, familiar in a way that made his pulse stop. He knew that face. He had seen it on business magazines, billboards, and news channels. Evelyn Hart. The name hit him like thunder. His glass slipped slightly in his hand. A wave of disbelief swept through him. It could not be her. But then she looked directly at him and smiled the same small, quiet smile that had lived in every message she had sent. The announcer's voice echoed through the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our founder and visionary, Miss Evelyn Hart." The applause roared. Ryan stood frozen in place. The mural behind him, his mural, was now framed by her name. His heart hammered against his ribs. Everything clicked together: the sponsorship, the invitation, the anonymous messages. Evelyn walked toward the stage. Her speech was composed, graceful. She spoke about art as a bridge between people, about hope painted in every color. But her eyes found Ryan again and again, lingering just long enough for him to know it was not coincidence. When the event ended, Ryan stepped outside into the cold, his mind spiraling. He could not stay. It felt as if the ground had shifted beneath him. Everything between them, every message, every shared word suddenly felt like a lie. Behind him, footsteps crunched through snow. "Ryan, please wait," her voice called. He turned, breath visible in the air. She stood there without her coat, snow gathering on her hair, her expression bare and human. "I never meant to deceive you," she said softly. "I just wanted to be someone ordinary, someone who could speak without people bowing or pretending." He shook his head slowly. "You already were. You just did not trust me to see it." The silence between them stretched thin. A car honked in the distance, the wind biting at their faces. She reached out, but he stepped back, the hurt too fresh, the distance too wide. "I do not know who you really are," he said quietly. "The woman who texted me, or the one they applauded tonight. Kuba." Evelyn's voice trembled. "Maybe I am both." Ryan looked at her one last time, his eyes soft but tired. "Then maybe I am not the man you thought you wanted to meet." He turned and walked away into the falling snow, leaving footprints that disappeared behind him. Evelyn stood there, alone under the streetlight, watching as the man who had reminded her how to feel disappeared into the night. The city moved around them, indifferent and bright. Somewhere above, the mural inside the pavilion caught the glow of the rising sun, its colors warming the cold marble walls. Destiny had brought them together, but now it waited, patient, to see whether the light they had found could survive the truth. Snow blanketed the city through the following week, muting every sound except the soft crunch of footsteps on frozen sidewalks. Ryan Carter barely noticed the cold. He spent his days painting inside his small apartment, the smell of turpentine and wet canvas thick in the air. Every brushstroke felt heavier now. He could not stop thinking about her, Evelyn Hart, the woman who had been both a voice in the dark and the face on the stage. He replayed their messages in his mind, her laughter through words, the way she had described mornings and rain, the way she had made him believe he mattered. Now all of it felt distant, almost fictional. He had met her, yes, but the person he had known was gone, replaced by the image of a billionaire with perfect posture and a world that could never belong to him. Still, each night, his phone stayed beside him. No new messages appeared. On the other side of the skyline, Evelyn moved through her office halls as if nothing had happened. Her staff congratulated her on the success of the gala, the mural that had touched every guest, the image that now graced the front page of 3 magazines. But she could not bring herself to look at the photo. It showed her standing beneath the painting, smiling at the crowd. What it did not show was the man who had walked away right after. Every decision she made that week felt mechanical. Meetings, signatures, presentations, none of it filled the silence that followed Ryan's words. "You just did not trust me to see it." They echoed inside her chest like a heartbeat she could not quiet. One night, she asked her driver to take her through Brooklyn instead of straight home. The streets were still alive, noisy, human. She saw small shops lit with yellow bulbs, families eating dinner by the windows, laughter spilling out onto the snow. The car stopped near a community center where children's drawings were taped to the glass. She stepped out quietly, ignoring the cold wind that whipped against her coat. Inside, volunteers were cleaning up after an art class. Paint-stained tables, crumpled paper, brushes soaking in jars. The sight stirred something deep in her. She had once loved places like this, long before boardrooms and stock tickers. That was when she noticed a small flyer pinned to the wall, Community Art Workshop led by Ryan Carter Saturdays. She traced her finger across his name, her breath catching. Without thinking, she took out her phone. For a long moment, she hesitated, then typed, "You were right. I should have trusted you. Love." Her thumb hovered above the send button, but she stopped. A simple text felt too easy. It could not fix what had broken. She put the phone away and walked back to the car. Meanwhile, Ryan continued his workshop that weekend, teaching children how to mix colors and create light from gray. He smiled and encouraged them, but when the class ended, he stayed behind alone, staring at the mural sketch he had started months ago. It showed a man standing in a storm, looking toward the sunrise. Only now, he added another figure, a woman in the distance, reaching toward the same light. Days passed before he finally received a message. It was not from her number. It came from the Heart Foundation itself. The message read, "You are invited to attend the launch of the Open Sky Art Initiative, a program supporting community artists. Your mural inspired it." At the bottom, in smaller text, was one line that made his heart stop. "I hope you will come." He read it again, unsure whether to laugh or cry. She had found a way to speak without hiding, a way to connect without pretending. Ryan closed his eyes, listening to the city hum outside his window. Snow continued to fall, soft and endless, erasing the lines between past and present. Maybe this was her way of saying sorry. Maybe it was a beginning disguised as an invitation. He looked at his unfinished mural and whispered, "Maybe it is time to finish it." Chowo. In the distance, across the river, a woman stood by her window, watching the same snowfall. Neither of them knew what the next day would bring, but for the first time since that night, both of them were looking at the same sky. The night of the Open Sky Art Initiative arrived beneath a calm winter sky. The city seemed gentler, its edges softened by the glow of streetlights and snow that refused to melt. Ryan Carter stood at the entrance of the restored community gallery, his hands buried deep in his coat pockets. He had almost decided not to come. Yet something about that last message, the quiet sincerity of "I hope you will come," had pulled him here. Inside, the walls were alive with color. Dozens of paintings from local artists lined the hall, each one carrying fragments of hope. At the center of it all stood a large canvas, his mural, the same one he had painted for the gala. It had been moved here, framed beneath a plaque that read, "Inspired by Ryan Carter, supported by the Heart Foundation." He stared at it, his reflection faint in the glass, when a voice spoke behind him. "You finished it." Ryan turned. Evelyn stood there in a dark blue coat, her hair loose, her expression unguarded. There were no cameras, no reporters, no board members. Just her. "I thought it belonged here," she said softly. "Not in a ballroom full of people who only came to be seen." "Oh God." Ryan searched her face. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was not sharp anymore. It was gentle, like the pause between breaths. "You did all this," he said. "You made this happen." Evelyn nodded. "Not for forgiveness. I did it because you reminded me of something I had forgotten. That art is not about ownership. It is about connection." He looked back at the mural, the colors glowing under the lights. "You reminded me too," he said quietly. "You reminded me what sunlight feels like." She smiled then, not the polished smile of a CEO, but the shy one he had seen in her texts. "Do you think it is too late for a second beginning?" Ryan hesitated. then stepped closer. The distance that had once felt impossible now dissolved into the space of a single heartbeat. "Maybe not," he said. "Maybe this was where we were supposed to start all along." Lev. The sound of children's laughter echoed from another room, students from his art class helping hang more paintings. Evelyn watched them, her eyes soft. "They are why this matters," she whispered. "They always were," Ryan replied. For a long moment they stood side by side, looking at the mural together. The storm in the painting had cleared. The sky was open, the light warm and steady. Outside, snowflakes drifted against the windows, each one melting into the glass before disappearing. Inside, two people who had once been strangers through a wrong number now stood under the same painted sun, no longer divided by titles or walls. Evelyn turned to him. "So, Mr. Carter," she said gently, "what comes next?" Ryan smiled. "Maybe we keep painting until we find out." And for the first time in a long while, both of them felt the quiet peace of a story finally beginning again. Spring arrived in the city like a slow breath of relief. The snow melted from the rooftops, revealing the colors of a world that had been asleep too long. For Ryan Carter, the past few months felt like a blur of change classes full of children's laughter, murals spreading across community walls, and Evelyn Hart appearing in all the ordinary corners of his life as if she had always belonged there. They had rebuilt their connection quietly, without grand gestures or announcements. Every Saturday, she visited the Open Sky Foundation site, leaving behind her world of glass offices and contracts. She would roll up her sleeves, help the children wash brushes, and listen to Ryan talk about light and shadow as if those lessons mattered more than profit margins. One afternoon, Ryan arrived at the new foundation office, a renovated brick space with sunlight spilling through high windows. Evelyn was already there, leaning over a large table covered with sketches and proposals. She looked up when he entered, smiling the kind of smile that reached her eyes. "You are late," she said softly. "I stopped to buy coffee for the entire class," he replied, setting down 2 cups. "Apparently, I am a soft teacher." She laughed, shaking her head. "You always were. That is why the children love you." For a moment they stood there in comfortable silence, surrounded by drawings taped to the walls, clouds, bridges, bright suns painted by small hands. On one of the papers, a child had written, "Hope lives in color." Evelyn touched the words gently. "This is what I wanted," she said. "Not another company, not another title, just this." Ryan looked at her, his voice low. "You built something real this time." She turned toward him. "We built it." That afternoon, the foundation hosted a small event for the local artists. People came carrying their paintings, photographs, and sculptures, each work reflecting a story of survival and gratitude. Ryan gave a short speech about creativity as a language of empathy. Evelyn stood beside him, her hand brushing his lightly when he spoke about second chances. Later, when the guests had left, they walked outside together. The city skyline glowed beneath the golden sunset, the same shade that Ryan had once struggled to paint. The wind carried the faint sound of children's laughter from a nearby park. Evelyn stopped and looked up. "Do you ever think about how strange it was?" she asked. "One wrong text. Out of millions of numbers." Ryan nodded, smiling. "Maybe it was not wrong at all. Maybe destiny just needed a signal." She laughed softly, eyes reflecting the light. "You and your poetic answers." "Blame the artist," he said. "We see meaning everywhere." They stood there as the sky deepened into amber and violet, the air warm enough to forget winter. Evelyn reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally, easily. "I think," she whispered, "this is what sunlight feels like." Ryan looked at her, his heart steady. "Then let us not lose it again." As the sun dipped behind the skyline, its last light touched the mural on the foundation wall, the same rising sun, brighter than before. 2 silhouettes, hand in hand, walking forward beneath an open sky. 1 year later, the city woke beneath a sky as bright as new paint. The Open Sky Foundation had become more than a program. It was a movement. Across Brooklyn, walls that once cracked and faded now carried colors of hope murals painted by children, by artists who had once believed they were forgotten, and by Ryan Carter himself. Inside the foundation's main building, laughter echoed through the halls. The annual One Kindness Day celebration had begun. Volunteers carried trays of food, parents helped their children hang drawings, and the scent of acrylic paint filled the air. Ryan stood near the entrance, greeting every face that came through the door, his clothes speckled with color as usual. On the far wall hung the mural that had started it all, the storm, the skyline, and the rising Sunday. Beneath it was a new addition, a small brass plaque engraved with the words, "Kindness begins where recognition ends." Evelyn Hart had written that line herself. She entered quietly, wearing a simple cream dress, no entourage, no cameras. The only thing she carried was a small cactus plant with a yellow ribbon tied around it. Ryan looked up and smiled when he saw her. "I thought you said you could not keep plants alive," he teased. She held up the cactus. "This one survived," she said. "It turns out they just need light." He laughed softly, remembering the first time they had spoken about light. She placed the small plant on the windowsill beside the mural, its tiny thorns catching the Sunday. When the event quieted down, she stood next to him, watching the children painting on the courtyard walls. "Do you ever think about how far this came?" she asked. "All the time," he said. "A wrong number, a cold night, and somehow this." Evelyn looked at him with a warmth that made her voice almost tremble. "It was never wrong," she said. "It was exactly where it needed to go." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of brushes and laughter filled the silence. Ryan reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. "I was saving this," he said. "I think now is the right time." He unfolded it. Inside was a sketch of the first painting he had ever made after meeting her, two figures standing beneath the same sunrise, holding hands beneath an open sky. At the bottom he had written 5 words, "Wrong number, right destiny, always." Evelyn smiled, tears bright in her eyes. "You never stopped believing in fate, did you?" He shook his head. "No. It just took me longer to understand that fate does not choose for us. It gives us a chance, and we decide what to do with it." Outside, the wind lifted the children's laughter higher, mixing it with the sound of the river and the soft hum of traffic. Evelyn slipped her hand into his, the same way she had done that first day at the foundation. The camera of life panned wider murals glowing, sunlight spreading, the small cactus blooming a single white flower. Ryan looked at the horizon and whispered, "Wrong number, right destiny." And with that, their story found its peace beneath an open sky, 2 hearts that had once texted through loneliness now standing side by side. Proof that even the smallest mistake can become the